Hello everyone. In this episode of Strange Logic, we're going to look at Darrell Brooks and why he doesn't know how to do things with words. Or more specifically, how he doesn't know how to make things happen with words. I'm not just talking about statements describing something. These statements do things. We call them performative utterances, because in making the utterance, something is performed. The best example of performative utterances is the justice system. Everything is kept on the record from this day to presumably the end of all days. Saying
guilty, not guilty,
objection,
overruled, sustained,
is an action that sets things in motion. Something happens. If I say
objection,
it is literally me halting the procedures, however briefly, for a judge to rule on the objection.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
And the judge's ruling is ending the halting and continuing the long, cold functioning of the justice system. Performative utterances only exist within certain contexts, though, and only if the person uttering them is being genuine. Used incorrectly or without sincerity makes the utterance not so much false as completely void. Back to Darrell Brooks. Brooks is not a genuine person, according to himself, but a sovereign individual. On November 21st, 2021, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, Darrell Brooks ran his vehicle through an annual Christmas parade, killing 6 people and injuring 60 others. This was following Brooks beating his ex-girlfriend and the mother of one of his children for the 3rd time in the previous month. He faced over 70 criminal charges, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. Brooks chose to fire his public defenders and represent himself. At the same time, Brooks stated that he was a sovereign citizen, which made the trial both exceedingly frustrating and, strangely enough, exceedingly entertaining.
I would like to correct the record and say that I am sovereign.
Subject matter jurisdiction.
I do not consent to being called that name.
Is that lawful law?
Is that a judicial decision?
I believe I have the authority to do
Judicial
that.
determination that you're making.
All of these utterances are frequently used by so-called sovereign citizens in what is called organized pseudo-legal commercial arguments. While there is no single, coherent, or complete set of sovereign citizen beliefs, largely because it's inherently incoherent, there are a couple of general principles that most sovereign citizens hold, including Darrell Brooks. 1. There is a rejection of court and state authority over an individual because said individual is sovereign and therefore exempt. 2. No obligation can be forced onto a sovereign citizen without their express agreement to it. They are immune from all obligations. 3. A single person has 2 legal aspects or can be split into 2 legal entities. This is known as the straw man argument, where there is a distinction between a legal person created by the government and a flesh and blood individual. Sovereign citizens believe any document that has their name in all capitals, like a birth certificate or some type of judicial document, refers not to their true selves, but to this fiction created by the government. Finally, 4, they believe they can unilaterally bind the state, a state actor, a court, or other persons with a foisted agreement. For instance, they still believe the U.S. Constitution protects their rights, or at least the rights of them as an individual, and protects their rights absolutely with no limits. So basically, sovereign citizens want all the rights that come with society, but none of the obligations. And their arguments are bullshit. They're pseudo-law. Their utterances pretend to exist within the context of the judicial system, but are actually meaningless. Let me explain. Philosopher J.L. Austin, who first popularized the notion of performative utterances, said words only do things in the right context. Quote, "Speaking generally, it is always necessary that the circumstances in which the words agree uttered should be in some way or ways appropriate. And it is very commonly necessary that either the speaker or the other person should also perform certain other actions, whether physical or mental actions, or even acts of uttering further words. Yet even if your utterances aren't appropriate in courts, like Brooks's, the judicial system has the power to determine your utterances in a way that allows the court to proceed." During Brooks's trial, he repeatedly used sovereign citizen performative utterances in a vain attempt at invalidating his trial, at delaying it, at overwhelming it, at causing a mistrial, and every other tactic under the sun, even building a cute little fort to protect him. Behold, the sovereign nation of Boxtopia!
For the subject matter jurisdiction to be verified and proven.
He committed the crimes within the jurisdiction of Waukesha, Wisconsin. The courtroom has jurisdiction.
Is that lawful law?
That's completely meaningless, but a law is only lawful if it can be enforced. Hence why you're shackled to the table.
I have the right to inform the jury about the truth and their duty and their rights. That's the First Amendment and the Sixth Amendment.
Not only do you not have an absolute right to free speech, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. In a courtroom, you definitely don't. I can't go into a courtroom and shout or even hold a sign and silently protest without being held in contempt and arrested and prosecuted. While a judge can't do anything they want during court, they have enormous discretion to control the integrity of the performative utterances of the judicial system in order for it to function. Darrell Brooks is absolutely not a sovereign. The judge is the sovereign.
Without
Not consent or agree to an estoppel, and I will move the court again.
Yep, that's how powerful the performative utterances of the judicial system is. You do not have to consent at all.
Your lack of consent is noted.
The judicial system is set up in such a way you can be tried without ever being present. It's called being tried in absentia. For instance, if the defendant refuses to be present. If the defendant attempts to prevent the court from functioning by interrupting or delaying, you can be held in contempt. You can be literally bound and gagged. And by your own conduct, the court can judicially determine that you've forfeited your right to face your accusers, forfeited your right to question witnesses, forfeited your right to testify on your own behalf. We could be here all day debunking sovereign citizen beliefs, but no matter how loud or obnoxious or insistent or rude Darrell Brooks is with his utterances, the utterances of the judicial system go back hundreds of years involving hundreds of millions of individuals, and they will not be moved by Darrell Brooks or any sovereign citizen. At the end of the day, despite all of his obnoxious utterances, the most satisfying utterance is this.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty, 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 guilty.
We're in hell, you piece of shit.
Guilty, 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 guilty.
We're in hell, we're in hell, we're in hell, you piece of shit.
Let us remember the famous words of English philosopher Thomas Hobbes, quote, "Where there is no common power, there is no law. Where no law, no injustice. Force and fraud are in war the two cardinal virtues. The laws are of no power to protect them without a sword in the hands of a man, or men, to cause those laws to be put in execution. And law was brought into the world for nothing else but to limit the natural liberty of particular men, in such manner as they might not hurt, but assist one another, and join together against a common enemy. This is our common enemy." Thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. The best way to support the channel is by becoming a patron on Patreon, or donating directly at my blog, strangecornersofthought.com. Obviously, if you don't have the money, like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, and or stalk me on Instagram. All of those are acceptable ways of supporting the channel. I'll see you the next time you make a wrong turn in another episode of Strange Logic. Bye! Special thanks to you, Srepet, for supporting the channel on Patreon.